everybody, and welcome to the 2025 UTMB, our trailgating coverage here at Freetrail, broadcasting from the Freetrail Chalet in the heart of Chamonix, France. Thus begins our coverage of what you could call the Super Bowl of trail and ultra running. My name is Dylan Bowman, joined today for the top 10 storylines of the 2025 UTMB by the man, the myth, the legend, the two-time podium finisher, Mr. Tim Tollefson. Tim, good to see you.
Bonjour, comment ça va?
Bonjour. You arrived last night. You got a good night's sleep.
Dude, I knocked out so hard. Got 8 solid hours. I feel ready to go.
Harmony and I were wrestling our son from about, midnight to 4 a.m. 10. Harmony was up a little bit longer than I was, but anyway, we got out for a little jog. It's a beautiful day here in the Chamonix Valley. The clouds broke after a couple cool rainy days, and it feels like summer as we approach this amazing trail running event. And again, today we're going to talk all about what you can expect here at the 2025 UTMB, the top 10 storylines. Later on in the weeks, actually starting tomorrow, we'll start previewing the races specifically. So we'll start with the OCC preview with Dani Moreno. Sunday, we're going to do the CC preview with two-time champion Hayden. Monday, we're doing a UTMB preview with Sally McRae. Tuesday, we're doing a prediction show with Corrine Malcolm and Keith Byrne. And then Wednesday onwards, we're going to start doing recap shows as the races start to culminate here in Chamonix, starting with TDS on Wednesday and then OCC, CCC, UTMB later in the week. Before we get going, a big thank you to Hoka for sponsoring our coverage today and throughout race week. Our third year doing our trailgating coverage with Hoka. Visit hoka.com and grab a pair of the Mafate 5s, a brand new shoe from the brand born here in the French Alps. Also, a big thank you to the team behind the scenes, Mr. Ryan Thrower on the 1s and 2s. What up, Rye? Also got a good run in this morning. We got Brett Jorgensen on the team here this year. Brett, we're grateful for your help. And of course, Harmony Bowman, the glue that holds the team together. And back home in Scranton, PA, Travis Longcar. Shout out to Travis, the king of trail technology, Freetrail's advanced analytics department. We're going to show you some really cool stuff that Travis put together for us later in today's show. But at the top here, make sure you go do Travis a solid and play fantasy. We're picking 10 deep across OCC, CCC, UTMB, fantasy.freetrail.com. And while you're there, check out the new analytics feature that Travis shipped just this week. You navigate to the stats tab, scroll down to analytics, and you're going to see a lot of very cool visuals about sort of some data as it relates to this year's UTMB. I think that's all the housekeeping here at the top. Tim, first and foremost, before we launch into our top 10 stories, Ryan's going to pull up a fun little photograph here. Let's do a little reminiscing. This is your 10th year at UTMB. What's our audience viewing right now? Just set the context.
This is a little snapshot of that first year. It was back in the day when our original Nike Trail team consisted of, the great Sally McRae, Zach Miller, David Laney, myself, a few others, and we as a crew had come out here to the Valley for the first time ever on the recommendation of some other trail runners, including Mike Foote and Mike Wolf. And that was a post-finish line shot of a few of us after Laney had taken third at UTMB, Zach won CCC, and I got second at CCC, and it gave birth to the now infamous Billy Yang film Mont Blanc that I think is one of those kind of inflection points of our sport. You could kind of trail or kind of track it back to like media having a really pronounced and profound impact. And I think for our North American audience, that was kind of the entry to a lot of people into the sport of UTMB. It had already been around for 10 or 12 years, but most Americans really didn't understand what European racing was. But I think that year, 2015, that photo and Billy Yang's film really kind of introduced this Super Bowl that we like to call it into the North American audience.
And it was the first time really that the American men had good results, Laney being on the podium. Seth Swanson was fourth at UTMB that year. You and Zach, as you said, on the podium in CCC as well. And also in the photograph, a younger Topher Gaylord who's still kicking our ass here. 56-year-old Topher, and of course, race director, founder, Katrine Poletti, and a much younger, much fitter, much healthier, much more impressive Dylan Bowman. That year I did CCC. And I vividly remember, I did OCC, excuse me. It was right after I DNF'd at Western States, jumped into OCC, sort of slogged it out. But then the next day, we hiked up the Grand Col Ferret, and we saw you and Zach Miller coming up over the top in, I think, first and third at that point, and then you moved your way into second. Anyway, fun memories.
It was really neat also because that was, as you said, we had had some great American women do well and champions, Rory Bossio, Nikki Kimball, Chrissy Mell, but the American men hadn't fared as well. And that year particularly, every time Zach and I would enter one of the villages, people were shocked to see the American flag on our bib just because they're like, Americans? They're in this race? We didn't think you guys ever came, but it was really fun. And I remember seeing you and Topher and everyone up on Grand Col Ferret, just losing your minds.
It was so great. Great memory. So Tim is back year 10, a decade on to do another UTMB. We are going to be doing a one-on-one athlete interview with Tim separately. So make sure you check that out first. But for now, we're going to launch into the top 10 storylines, and Tim's going to sort of behave more like a commentator than an athlete. But I'm sure we'll weave in some of your personal experience here at the race, because you have been one of the most successful Americans here at UTMB over the course of the last decade. Our number 10 storyline, diving into it, 5 straight American victories in the big race in UTMB. Of course, the race has been owned by the greats Courtney Dauwalter and Katie Scheid over the last 5 years. So first storyline, tossing it to you, Tim. I'm sure the Europeans, I'm sure the Asian athletes are hungry to get back on the top step of the podium. Courtney Dauwalter is back. Abby Hall, another great American in the field coming off a Western States victory. Comments on the streak and any thoughts on if it might continue?
I think it's the Americans' race to lose, which is wild to say. But if you look back at the history of this race, it's been going on since 2003. 10 of those victories have come from American women. Like I said, Chrissy Male has 2 victories. Nikki Kimball, Rory Bossio had 2. Courtney has 3. Katie has 2. So I really think that the streak is really not under threat if Courtney has a good day. I think it's almost you could bet your money. This is, bet the farm that Courtney will, or that an American will take top honors again. But that's what makes it exciting. And I think it's, we're really living in that age of Courtney and Katie, and particularly they're the analog to Francois and Killian for the men's side, where the 2 of them have just racked up wins and course records across every important race across the globe. And I think that Courtney being back here, she has one mission. She wants her course record back. And I think that it's fun to see it kind of being volleyed back and forth between Katie and herself. Yeah.
And this is probably the freshest Courtney has ever been coming into the race this year, starting the season with sort of an unfortunate DNF at Cocodona 250, but then smashing Lavaredo. So maybe coming into it with a little bit more gas in the tank than she usually does. I mean, we'll remember the year that she did the ridiculous triple of Western States Hard Rock and still won here at UTMB. You got to imagine with a little bit more freshness, the great Courtney Dauwalter could challenge Katie Scheid's course record set just last year. Of course, Katie took that honor from Courtney Dauwalter's performance from, I think it was 2022. Speaking of American women, before we move on, a cool sub-storyline, compliments of Travis, the king of trail technology and Freetrail's advanced analytics department, is that if you analyze the top 50 athletes on the women's side for all 3 of the world final events, OCC, CCC, UTMB, and do a distribution based on nationality, the American women are tops in the field for all 3 of those races. In other words, the deepest field by nationality in all 3 races are the Americans, and this is based on UTMB index. So very interesting, I think representative of just the strength of American trail running right now, and specifically American female trail running right now. But yeah, American women have always done well here, to your point. I mean, It predates Courtney.
So we're
Katie.
looking at 10 American victories for women, 1 for the men. But we're on the board. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so
Jim.
much. Let's get a second one, guys. Let's bring it home. But we're looking at probably, if we record, in 10 days, we'll have 11 victories for women. And maybe 2 for men.
You feel very confident in that prediction.
I do. Come at me. Prove me wrong, world.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll do more sort of prognostication on this later in the week, but I don't think there's a lot of people that disagree with you. Courtney coming in as the favorite, but Abby Hall certainly in the mix here, coming off of a huge victory. And I would say the other favorite on the women's side, probably Ruth Croft here. So a great triumvirate there at the top of the rankings. Moving on, storyline number 9. The first time a Kenyan could be seen as a favorite here in one of the world final events. Joylene Chepneno in the OCC start list. A very fun and exciting moment for the sport and a fun thing for the audience to follow along with at OCC. Any comments on this as a trend, Tim?
I mean, you love to see it. We've seen Kenyan athletes really excel at the Golden Trail distances. And there have been some that have had success over at UTMB, but I think this is, it's really neat just to see the country probably or potentially like in these training groups prioritize something like UTMB. And the more we get that adoption, I think we're going to continue to see these competitive fields at the sub ultra OCC distance continually deepen. And yeah, I love to see it. It's great. And I think one of our storylines later, we can kind of talk about, kind of the rise of the ETC, but I think that we'll probably see more and more kind of East Africans target that. And it's sort of the gateway distance into the longer stuff. I think we've always theorized like, hey, and a popular debate is like, what could Kipchoge run for like an ultra, or what could he do? It's like, yeah, in theory, he has the capacity and the tools to crush, but does he have the incentive or the mindset? And I think we're starting to see more and more of some of these East African countries target the distances of ultra and beyond. And yeah, I love to see more representation of countries worldwide getting into our sport.
Yeah, so cool. On the men's side at OCC, there's an athlete named Ezekiel Ruto, also a Kenyan who has had a solid sub-ultra distance season. I think he was 4th at the Mont Blanc Marathon. Joylene won the Mont Blanc Marathon and Sierra Zinal. So clearly can compete with the best athletes in the world. This will be her longest race ever, probably her longest run of her life. But I was talking to Dani Moreno about it, and she estimates it's roughly 2 hours longer than the Mont Blanc Marathon. So not a massive jump, not a massive stretch, but certainly something that will require new skills and a new mindset for Joylene. It's going to be a fun storyline to follow.
And the fact that she did so well at Mont Blanc Marathon, if she can just keep that nutrition dialed and the mindset and pacing a little bit, 2 hours is definitely doable. That's a gap that you can bridge based on current fitness.
Yeah. So you mentioned sort of some of the other athletes that we've seen sort of rising up through the Golden Trail World Series and the World Mountain Running Tour. People like Philemon Kiriago, Patrick Kipneno, El Hussein, obviously, Moroccan athlete, Joyce and Jeru. We did a podcast recently where we talked about the Milamani team. It really is just a matter of time until we see more athletes bridge up. I also made a comment to Dani yesterday that I'm actually kind of surprised. I was thinking this was the year Patrick and Philemon would at least do ETC.
Yeah, do
something.
one of these.
Yeah. So anyway, it's going to be great to see them when they eventually move up. Like El Hussein too, when he eventually jumps into OCC, that is going to be Popcorn City. Anyway, very cool moment for the sport, and something that we'll probably be talking about here in our top 10 storylines, not only this year, but in years to come. Moving on, the number 8 storyline. This one is super fun. John Albin and Ruth Croft going for the world final trifecta, something that only the great Xavier Thevenard has done. What I mean by that is winning all 3 of the world final events, OCC, CCC, and UTMB. Xavier, of course, also won TDS. So very rare air. The petite prince of the Alps, Xavier Thevenard, a 3-time UTMB champion who has also won all the shorter distance races. John Albin and Ruth Croft have both won OCC and CCC, looking to round the corner and get that 3rd championship for their trophy mantle. Tim, comments on these 2 great athletes?
Love to see it. Ruth obviously debuted her UTMB and had a huge success on that first time. But I think she in particular is one that I believe she learned a lot from that first one where she probably finished with a little too much in the tank. I think she closed down the final 50K of that UTMB faster than anyone else in the field, which just highlighted that she could have gotten out a little quicker, but being that it was her debut, she paced herself. So I would expect Ruth to be a little more aggressive this year.
Me too.
And I think that she will be tagging and targeting the back of Courtney. And she's one that is incredibly dangerous. She's very fast. I would not be surprised. I'm not going to walk back my statement that American women are going to bring home a title, but I think if someone were to prevent it, it would be Ruth, and she has the capabilities to do so. John Albon, an incredible runner. He has shown his success in mountain running and obstacle racing. Obviously, his debut at Western States, where he absolutely crushed it, ran sub 15 in his first time ever. But I think that UTMB is a course that suits him a lot better, as evident by winning CCC and OCC. I think that the men's field is so deep, it's a little harder for me to see Albon, kind of take the title this year with the amount of, talent that we'll talk about eventually. But I think Ruth, I really think that she has a shot, a legitimate shot. And as you said, the Prince of Chamonix, Xavier Thevenard, a lot of our viewers may not be familiar with that name, but if you go back to 2015 through about 2020, he was just on a tear. If it wasn't Kilian or Francois that won, Xavier would win, and he won basically everything.
Yeah, so 3 victories for Xavier. He also finished second in 2019 behind Pau Capel, and he was fourth in 2017, that year that you and I both... He was just behind you in 2017.
Yeah, I was running scared.
So 5 finishes, all in the top 4.
He just did not miss.
Anyway, a great athlete from UTMB history. Adding a couple more things here. Dani also made a fun comment when we were talking a couple of weeks ago about Ruth, about the fact that she's won a Golden Trail World Series event. She's obviously won OCC twice. She's won CCC once. She's won Western States. Like, if she added a UTMB win... My God. I mean, of course, she's already a first ballot Hall of Famer, but what a career from the great Kiwi. This season, Ruth won the Tarawera 100K. We watched it in person, Ryan and I, a spectacular, amazingly impressive performance. Declined her golden ticket because she was focused on UTMB.
Which I think is I think back to some of my most successful days here. It was when I targeted my entire season around this. Yeah. I compromised everything else with this singular focus. And I think you're seeing that with someone like Ruth, where she has kind of erased the calendar and said, hey, there's one date that matters. It's August 29th, 2025, nothing else. And that's everything. That's her focal point. And I think that puts her in a position to really, mix it up with Courtney.
Yeah. Actually, I agree with your statement about, just making the prediction that Ruth might approach things a little bit more aggressively this year. I didn't go back and look at the splits, but I was thinking about it earlier this week because I think Ruth was as far back as an hour behind Katie at Trient, with only whatever that is, 20 miles to go, something like that. Finished, I think, 40 minutes behind her. So Ruth was making up time. It was still, a comfortable margin for Katie last year, but Ruth was charging, ran one of the fastest back halves of the race ever, if not the fastest. So let's see if Ruth tries to step on the gas a little earlier this year. That would be fun to watch. John, I think, is similar to Ruth in terms of structuring his season very intentionally towards this. He was second at Transgran Canaria to start his season behind Caleb Olson, and then he was first at the UTMB Snowdonia 100K in front of Mathieu Blanchard, who, of course, has 2 podium finishes here as well. So it's been a bit of a quiet season for John, and just in terms of racing volume, 2 events, both great results, and I think, has left a lot of gas in the tank here.
Which, as you even point out with Courtney, as the sport continues to elevate and get deeper in talent, I think we're going to see that prioritization be necessary for an athlete to do well, where we're in the days of, 10 wins and 10 course records in a season is probably long gone. Yeah. Athletes are going to have to be very selective on where they decide to target and how they peak, just because the margins are getting smaller and smaller with the depth of the field.
Totally. All right, so a couple more fun stats for our audience before we move to the next storyline. So again, people to win all of the world final races, only Xavier Thevenard. People to podium all the world final races, Xavier Thevenard, Blandine Hirondelle, and Katie Scheid. People to win 2 of the 3, Tony McCann, Mao Yao, Ruth, and John Albon, who we just talked about. people with podiums at 2 of the 3 races. Pau Capel, who did it at CCC and UTMB, plus TDS. Tom Evans, UTMB and CCC. Ludo Pomeray, CCC, UTMB. Tim Tollefson, CCC, and UTMB. Zach Miller, CCC, UTMB. Mimi Kotka, CCC, UTMB. We talked about John. Thibaut Baronian, OCC and CCC. Petter Engdahl, OCC and CCC. So I don't know. I think it's fun, and it'll become more and more prevalent in the conversation of like following athletes through the course of their career, how they perform across distances here at the event. So I think it's fun to just sort of collect these stats in real time as that becomes more and more entrenched. So I think that's it. I guess we can move on. Our number 7 storyline here of the 2025 UTMB, the old heads. I'm sorry to brand it in such a way, but we obviously mean this in an endearing way. What the storyline is getting at is the strength of the Masters field at UTMB specifically. We are lucky to have Tim Tollefson here on the couch, who, if you can believe it, turned 40 years old in March of 2025.
Repping the old dogs.
Yeah. Francois D'Haene, I think his birthday is like in May or June. He just turned 40. Courtney just turned 40. Of course, Ludo Pomeray is now in his 50s as of the end of July. Miguel Herras, also in his 50s, a previous podium finisher here. Jean-Philippe Schumi, also a 40-plus Masters athlete. It's a heck of a contingent for the Masters crew at UTMB. What do you think about the old heads?
I mean, could there be a Masters podium for overall category, like in this race? Yeah. It makes me think back to 2016, my first UTMB. And that was the year that Ludo came back from 50 plus place at Courmayeur to win the thing. And like the kind of the post, I don't know, as the dust settled, Laney, Zach and I sat there and we were thinking, a 40-year-old just beat all of us. And now he's 50 and he has a chance to win again. Like the guy defies all logic, but it's really cool to see. And now, you know, some of us, as you mentioned, we're now sitting in that position where, you know, it's quite possible with the names, you know, Francois and Courtney and Ludo, you know, like we very well could have a 40 or a 50-year-old top the podium this year for both the men and the women, which is really neat to see. It kind of shows that in our sport, especially these long mountain ultras where you're going to be running for 20 plus hours, experience, you know, mental fortitude and grit, problem solving, all of those things matter as much as the physical, you know, capabilities or you know, talents
youthful
of
vigor.
It goes a long ways. So I think it's really neat. I still am just wrapping my head around like Ludo winning Hard Rock last month at almost age 50, and now coming back
49.9 years old.
But I think he's gunning for, he wants to do what Francois did. He wants to do what Killian did. He wants the double. He wants to try and set course records at both. So he's going to be in the mix from the gun. So
unbelievable. All right. So I pulled a couple of fun stats here. So between Tim Tollefson, Francois D'Haene, Courtney Dauwalter, Ludovic Pomeray, and Miguel Herras, 8 victories, 11 podiums, 14 top 5s.
Ooh.
So let's see how many of the old heads land in the top 10 here again this year. And also, a couple more notes on Ludo here. He's going himself for his 5th top 5 here, including his 2016 victory. He's also been on the podium of CCC. Of course, we just saw him smash Hard Rock again for the 2nd year in a row. And, you know, just when you think he's just very consistent, you know, especially at these long, hard races. I mean, another thing we talked about at Hard Rock is that Ludo has won Hard Rock, UTMB, and Diagonal des Fous. So I was like, you got to win Western States before it's too late, bro. He's like, no, there's no way. But 3 of the 4, we call the majors, you know, the major 100-milers. Anyway, it's cool to see if Ludo can continue his amazing string of success. And one of the highlights of 2024 was when Nico Mermoud and a couple of other Frenchmen greeted Ludo at the finish line last year and carried him around like Rudy at Notre Dame. There's great photographs of that. So great storyline following the old heads at the 2025 UTMB. Moving on, number 6 storyline, my favorite hobby horse, ETC, an ascendant race, I think. Doesn't get a lot of media attention outside of me talking about it relentlessly, but I think it has the opportunity to become a really important event, potentially even a 4th world final here if UTMB wanted to invest in it. A 15-kilometer race of only 9 miles, 4,000 feet of vert on Tuesday at 2 p.m. in Courmayeur. What do you think about ETC? Have you looked at the start list at all?
I haven't had a chance to check out the list of runners, but I'm not surprised to see this happen. I think UTMB, we've kind of categorized UTMB as ultra beyond and Golden Trail World Series sub ultra, but I would not be surprised if everyone internally at UTMB has always been eyeing that subcategory or the sub-ultra category as an important discipline that they want to be represented. And I think also as all of these major World Series are starting to look at, hey, how do we broadcast? How do we get media rights? How do we reach a new audience? That sub 2 hour distance is kind of the prime spot. And so I think something like the ETC fills that void that UTMB currently doesn't have. And I could see them pouring more resources, more time, more kind of like just deploying everything they have at their disposal to make this more competitive. And it could be kind of a direct shot across the bow of Golden Trail, just like, hey, we can play, we have everything, we are the most important race in the world, so why not offer something sub ultra? So I think that we're going to see year over year it get more competitive, the depth increase, and then also I think it could be that gateway distance that UTMB actually broadcasts to a new audience and brings in even new viewerships and keeps them relevant in kind of that space as the landscape continually changes.
Totally. And I wish they were doing a live stream of it this year.
I'm really surprised
I think
they're
that'll
not.
be the signal. If they do a live stream for it, that means that eventually I think they're going to really try and push it as a world final. I do think it is a big opportunity for them. And you do see them incorporating a lot of the shorter distance races at the UTMB World Series events now. So it would make sense for them to professionalize it a little bit more. I think there's certainly space for both Golden Trail and UTMB to coexist in a friendly manner. But you're right. I mean, this does look like a mini Golden Trail event. Are the reigning Golden Trail World Series champion El Hussein El Azawi, our reigning trail runner of the year, is racing ETC on Tuesday afternoon. Madalena Floria, Lucas Earl, Toma Carden. It's like a real deal race this year. Yeah. And, it's again, sort of like TDS now. The world final events kind of occupy the bulk of the conversation for Freetrail and a lot of other media platforms. You got to be, I think, have restraint in terms of all the things you cover. But I see just a lot of potential here for ETC, and I'm sure UTMB feels the same way. So.
It's also a really neat gateway for the youth participation where you can get, if you just look at any of the local townships around the Alps, there is such a robust kind of a young, running ecosystem of, those under 18-year-olds. And I think this could be a nice way for them to kind of cut their chops in more of a World Series style format and then just build their pedigree as they eventually kind of either level up, but as to your point, maybe never level up. I'd love to see this sub-ultra stuff. I know we've talked about it a lot, but more and more opportunity for runners. If they only want to race sub-ultra, I would love to see that exist so that they don't have to go long if they don't want to.
It reminds me, somebody messaged me about this after I had talked about it recently, that I think ETC started with the inspiration that it was for the crews of people doing the longer races, sort of like MCC is for the people who work.
Yeah, the volunteers.
So I think that's actually a pretty cool thing that UTMB does, is sort of create these events for people who aren't necessarily professional athletes. But for you and I, Tim, it's fun to, have the hypothetical of what if this race really professionalizes? That would be cool. And it also reminds me of another important race that's happening this week, the kids race, where Rhodes Jaffe Bowman is going to be participating for the first time.
Let's go.
And I'm calling it now. We're winning this thing. We are winning this thing, okay? All right, moving on. Before we get to our number 5 storyline, which is going to be sick, I just want to pause and say a big thank you to our friends at Hoka for supporting our coverage here this week and for the last 3 years of our UTMB trailgating. You got to go check out the new Mafate 5. I was running up on the balcony up there close to Mer de Glace earlier today. There's a bunch of hikers up there. Had to pause for a second. A lady was walking by me. She looked down and said, "Hey, we're wearing the same shoes." The Mafate 5, good enough for me up there, good enough for some casual hikers. And as Hayden Hawks said, it's good enough to actually rip the UTMB course, so go check it out. Hoka's new real long-distance mountain shoe, a curved TPU plate, what they're calling the rocker integrity technology, sandwiched between 2 pieces of supercritical foam. The Vibram Mega Grip, 5 millimeter lugs on the outsole. Strap that thing on and you are shred ready here in the mountains, especially here at UTMB. It is a gnarly shoe that really does perform in this type of environment. Check it out at Hoka.com. Again, the Mafate 5, and a big thank you to Hoka. Storyline number 5 here. We got a bunch of graphics to talk through here. We're calling this storyline Stats Corner, which is basically just our opportunity to take a lot of the things that Travis has done for us, crunching numbers, analyzing data, and putting it in a visual format that we think is really compelling. Ryan, if you could pull up the top 25 ranked runners here, I just want to set the context. This, I think, is interesting, right? So what we're looking at here, on top is the women's races for the World Final, UTMB, OCC, and CCC in that order. The bottom half is the men, UTMB, OCC, CCC in that order. And what this does is we're looking at the top 25 athletes in these 3 races and then looking at their average UTMB index score. This is a way for us to analyze and assess the density of competition and the level of competition in these races. I think it's interesting. A couple of things that jump out. OCC and CCC for the top 25 athletes, exactly the same competitive density and slightly ahead of UTMB. So by UTMB index, UTMB, the long race, the most significant race, is the least competitive of the bunch. Looking at the men, OCC, the most competitive race of the week by UTMB index.
You know who skews that average?
Jim Walmsley. Well, but if you look at this graphic, look at the women UTMB.
Yeah.
So the bar that you see there is sort of the lowest ranked athlete in that top 25 and the highest ranked athlete. So who do you think skews the women there? I mean,
Miss Courtney Dauwalter.
With Courtney Dauwalter in the race, it still, doesn't pull that dot too far to the right. But I mean, your point is well made. Jim definitely does enhance the competitiveness by UTMB index of the men's race at OCC. But I think it's interesting. OCC, objectively, the most competitive race of the week for the men, and OCC and CCC together for the women.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating.
It's pretty clustered for the men. So, OCC is not that far ahead of UTMB, which is in the top 25, the second most.
But what I love about that, it's something that we have harped on for years, that everyone doesn't have to run 100 miles. Our sport is amazing for so many reasons, but the 100K, the 50K, those distances can be bare knuckled boxing matches. And seeing these stats to back it up, where some of the most competitive, most talented men and women in the world are choosing to race over 50 kilometers at something like this. And part of that is that there is incentive. There's good media coverage. There's good opportunity. There's bonuses like incentives for their contracts, which all feeds into that healthy ecosystem of that 50K, 50 mile, 100K, competitive distance. And again, I'm here for it. I'd love to see this happen more and more and more.
Yeah. I think them shifting to this world final model is so good for the sport, so good for the pro athletes. And it's visualized here objectively in this data. Like, this is where we see, when you and I did UTMB 2017,
20 years ago.
Yeah. Right. Like, we'd have to go back and analyze that data, but my guess is UTMB by a mile was the most competitive race.
If you did OCC or CCC, it was kind of like Hard Rock, whereas like I got like a 1 in 3 chance of winning this race. That's tongue in cheek, but it kind of felt that way where you'd have 40 or 50 guys, 40 or 50 women in the UTMB, and then the cliff was such a sharp drop off to the other distances.
Yeah. So that's why, going back to a previous storyline, it's going to be very hard for people to stack up wins across distances here. And that's why it's going to be so fun to see whether Ruth Croft and John Albin are able to pull off that trifecta. We're going to touch on the next graphic here just briefly, because what this does is show, this is, Ryan, can you pull up the top 25 with 2024? So this is effectively the same table, the same graph, but with 2024 data also. So one thing that we've been talking about throughout the year is whether or not the World Championship and the close proximity of the World Championships taking place next month would impact the competitive field here at UTMB. And I think based on this data, we can safely say that it hasn't, or at least hasn't significantly.
Or it has impacted people's choice to do UTMB.
That's exactly what I was
getting at. And so they're prioritizing OCC or CCC so they can do the double.
Yep. So if we look at UTMB specifically, we will see that for the women, it was fairly significantly more competitive for the long race last year. For the men, only slightly, but still slightly more competitive. And that's what I wanted to see here was like, of course, OCC and CCC, it's a lot easier to do a double. And we'll get to talking about people who will be doing the double with a UTMB World Final race and the World Championships here shortly. But you definitely can't do UTMB and a World Championship race. So we might see, at least a little bit of reduction in competitiveness just in the long race based on the proximity of the World Championships. And you see that mostly on the women's side. Yep. But anyway, that's interesting. Ryan, if you could pull up returning top finishers, same race graphic. This is just a way to visualize people who are returning from the top 10 and top 15 from last year's World Final events. So for the women, we have 5 of the top 10 returning for UTMB, 6 of the top 10 for OCC, 5 of the top 10 for CCC, and then the slightly less purple shaded areas for the top 15. So we've got 7, 7, and 6 respectively in the top 15. I think this is interesting. Only 3 of the top 10 men are coming back for UTMB. I think this is also maybe representative of the World Championships. I bet a grip of those guys are either doing a shorter distance race or foregoing it altogether to go to the World Championships. But 6 men from the top 15 at UTMB, 4 from OCC, 3 from CCC also, smaller numbers. But I don't know. I just thought this was interesting. Comments on that?
Yeah, I think that I would agree that, and I know a few of the men that have forewent coming back to UTMB because they are on world champs teams for their respective countries. And it opens that door for kind of the fields, I think, for men and women, with the exception of what we've said about Courtney being back in the field for women. But you don't see that returning depth. And some of it could be for men, even we had some of those athletes, they did UT or they did Western States. So like coming back and trying to do that double is a difficult one to do. But
right. If you pull up the last graphic here, we'll just touch on this briefly. What we're going to look at here is returning top 10 finishers from any race. So taking, for example, somebody who finished in the top 10 of UTMB, but is doing a different event. This is where you can visualize that. And again, everybody can go look at all this stuff yourself at fantasy.freetrail.com. So if you're not following along in real time, go check this out. Again, under the stats tab, navigate to analytics. The one thing I just want to touch on here that I think is interesting, again, 3 of the top 10 men are returning to UTMB in 2025. 3 of the top 10 men from 2024 are doing OCC. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And I think that probably speaks, combination, and I think we'll touch on one of the athletes in particular, but there could be, that focus on, hey, this is a great tune-up to test tactics, get your racing chops going before world champs, in about 4 weeks. And if you are a little banged up from a season of racing, it's a great way to still be involved, but not punish yourself with a 176 kilometer loop around the mountain.
Yeah. Anyway, very cool stuff. Big thank you to Travis for putting all that together. Stats Corner, our 5th storyline. Moving along, our number 4 storyline, the doublers, extending the conversation we were just having. I want to talk about both the athletes that are doubling from Western States to UTMB, and then those who will be doubling from a UTMB World Final event to the World Championships. Starting with Western States, this is interesting. Only 3 of the top 10 men from Western States are doing any race here. Last year, it was 8 of the top 10 men.
Are they learning?
Or it's the World Championship effect, like Caleb Olsen.
Yeah.
I mean, I should have written this all down because it's
But that is fascinating because we've seen, if you were to trace back at least the last 5-6 years, it feels like everyone that did Western States comes here because either they want to prove they can do the double, which they can't, or they want to they really want to redeem themselves from blowing up at Western States.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Which often doesn't bode well either. But.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's see here. So Jeff McGavro is doing the double, Western States to UTMB. That's going to be interesting. And we're going to have him in studio. I'm really excited to talk to him. Dan Jones also. And then Chris Myers is doing CCC.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting. Of course, that's the top 5 so with Killian and Caleb, that's the top 5 from Western States. Of course, Killian is doing his project in the US and Caleb will be one of the anchors of the men's long distance team at Worlds. Of the top 5 women, we've got Abby Hall. Of top 5 women from Western States, we got Abby Hall, the champion, who's going for UTMB. And then Fuzhao Zhang and Fiona Pascal are both doing CCC. Marion Hogan pulled out due to injury. Ida Nilsson, do you know what she's doing?
She's not racing this year.
She must be doing Worlds, right, for Sweden? Okay, great. And then we have from the top 10 women, Hannah Allgood's doing OCC. Caitlin Fielder has been on the CCC list, though I think she's likely going to be pulling
because she tore her quad at Western States.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would doubt that she was able to recover in time for this.
Emily Hallgood is interesting. Yeah, could challenge your assumption that an American will win, although we can just call her an American. Ho Ha, doubling from Western States, going to CCC. So 7 of the top 10 women from Western States are doubling, where only 3 of the top 10 men are. That's interesting.
And we've seen in the past, women pulling off the double has been far more successful than men trying to pull off the double.
Yeah. All right, so just then pivoting and talking about people who will be doubling from a UTMB World Final event to Worlds. I have mostly Americans. This is mostly off the top of my head, so we're definitely going to miss people from other countries here, but this is, I think, just a cool group of athletes and a fun thing for the fans to follow, not only this weekend, but again, in a month's time. Francesco Puppi, doing CCC this weekend, and then the short distance world championship for Team Italy. Of course, Jim Walmsley, OCC, long course. Jess Brazeau, ETC. I guess that's not a world final event. She moved down from OCC, and then she's doing the vertical at Worlds. We've heard that Ryan Becker and Lindsay Allison are now out of OCC, so scratch their names off the list, but they were planning to do OCC in short. Adam Peterman, OCC, and the long course team. Our long course team is freaking nails.
It's stacked.
Allison Baca, CCC and long course. Eli Hemming, CCC and short course. Tabor, the same. Tabor Hemming, CCC short. David Sinclair, the same. And then, so aside from Poopy, the other international athlete I knew off the top of my head was Joaquin Lopez doing OCC and long course for Ecuador. So, and I've already made him commit to doing a jersey swap with me and getting that Ecuadorian team singlet. Any further comments on the doublers here?
Even though the time frame between UTMB and World Champs is shorter, I think a lot of these athletes that are doing that, the 50K here and then the long, or the 100K and then short, like Poopy, I think that double is actually a little more favorable than like the Western States UTMB double, because the specificity of each race is a little closer. You can really plan for that. And it's close enough where it actually benefits you, where if you timed your peak and had a double peak correctly, you're not dealing with the 8-9 week gap between Western States and UTMB. And it's almost like training for a track race and then training for a mountain race. So I think that we're going to see a lot of success from these doublers. I would say more so from UTMB to World Champs than Western States to UTMB.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Yeah, it reminds me, of course, Katie Scheid is an outlier, but if she can win Hard Rock and get third in Sierras and all in 4 weeks' time, you could see Poopy,
Goodness gracious,
winning CCC and then
I mean, Poopy made
another medal.
He's like publicly stated this a while ago that was really something that intrigued him. He wanted to do that double. Yeah. So that he and his coach and the entire team have been targeting that and doing everything they can to be successful at both.
Our audience will remember when I viciously tried to peer pressure Francesco Poopy to take a golden ticket into Western States. We said, no, I want to do CCC in the World Championships. That's more motivating to me. And he will be one to watch as he moves up in distance here after 2 podiums at OCC. Fun storyline, the doublers. Moving on, our third storyline here. Jim Walmsley is back and running OCC. We just talked about it, but a very exciting development when the start lists were finally published a couple of weeks ago. Jim's name was still on the UTMB list, made everybody sort of scratch our heads a little bit, contemplating whether or not he was healthy. Of course, his Strava account has been painfully silent for a few years.
Strava dark.
So it's hard to get a visual into, his fitness level, but I have to be confident that if he's lining up, he's feeling ready to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's dangerous. He doesn't take the start line unless he feels confident that he can compete. And with his, this entire season has had to been, he pivoted when he got injured, unfortunately, and, coming off of Chianti and not able to start Western States. I'm sure that the focus really became, possibly UTMB, but knowing World's long course and having such a loaded USA team, as you mentioned, that's probably been the focal point. So this is going to be a great tune-up, but I could see him really letting it rip to test the body and make sure that he's ready to really go for broke at Worlds.
Yeah, I just saw on LinkedIn this morning, David Callahan posted an article that CNN just wrote about Jim in the advance of OCC. So if people want to Google that, it's actually a cool read.
CNN.
CNN.
Dang.
So
Hoka PR team earn their keep.
Exactly. Shout out to the PR team. But it is a good article and it's worth reading. And I'm just very excited to see it after him having to pull out of Western States. I'm sure that was really hard for him, especially to see his course record be challenged really by Caleb Olson. I bet he's motivated. And from what you can gather through osmosis, obviously we saw him pace Ludo for 30 miles on the Hard Rock course. That's hard to do, especially when you're with Ludo, the champion. And then, just observing the Hoka team camp, which has been taking place here just down valley in Saint-Gervais. It seemed like Jim was getting out with the dogs, with Farvard and Poopy, and Peterman, etc. And it seemed like they were doing some bigger days. So hopefully Jim is ready. And then, of course, it will be a stepping stone where he will hopefully then be challenging for his second World Championship gold medal in a month's time in Confranc. But great to have Jim back on the show, or back in the mix. He will be on the show.
I was going to say, hopefully.
Yeah, he will be on the show. Just for the audience, Jess Brezzo, as we mentioned, is racing ETC on Tuesday. They're going to come over on Tuesday afternoon. So we're planning to do a post-race interview with Jess combined with a pre-race interview with Jim. So look forward to that to our audience. But I mean, it's worth saying, right? Like, there's not a lot of people who can. Apparently, he just ripped a vertical race here recently. Of course, he's a great 100-miler. Having the range to also be a great 50K athlete. It's going to be interesting. Oh, do you think he's going to use poles?
For OCC?
Yeah.
No, he's going to be moving too fast.
You think?
Yeah, he's going to be ripping.
I don't know.
I think he's
used him in a VK.
He's going poleless. That's true. But OCC is such a runnable race. I mean, we use air quotes, but it's, I mean, Jim Walmsley, he's the Subaru Outback of the sport. He can do everything.
All right, I'm going to take the other side of that bet. I'm saying he's using poles. Okay. We'll wager,
is he going to win?
Gelato on it, okay? I could see him winning. I haven't done my fantasy roster yet, but we'll make those predictions later in the week. Moving on, our number 2 storyline, the return of Francois D'Haene, the 4-time champ. Just when people started to count him out, he is so back. Francois, of course, as one of the greatest long-distance athletes our sport has ever seen. Getting up there, he's part of the old heads crew now. He was dealing with serious injury, broke his leg a couple of years ago, really put him out of super high-level competition for a year and a half or 2 years. Of course, he won Tour de France last fall, then just broke the FKT on Nolan's 14. Got to believe Francois is in form right now.
Absolutely. And he kind of did the classic Francois training where if anyone follows him on Strava, just in the last, 10 days, basically did a loop of the course with absolutely ridiculous stats. So you have to believe that he's firing on all cylinders. He wants to cement his name as the only 5-time champion of this race. He has the tools. He has the motivation. He's going to be a dangerous one out there in the field. It's as we talked about, maybe it's a bit of a young gun, game in terms of the other athletes that could contend for the title. But Francois having 4 titles to his name, and some of those or all of them were up against Xavier or Killian and others where not a single one was kind of a gimme.
No.
It's I think he's going to be the one to beat this year.
And the last one was in 2021 when he did the Hard Rock UTMB double, winning both of them. Yeah, I love how you mention his training strategy. I think it's actually fascinating and novel, and people should go look at his Strava, just what he's done sort of since Nolan's and even before. But he is his trademark strategy is effectively just slamming training together for a couple of weeks, right?
Yep.
Like being consistent and then doing something massive and then sharpening up, resting up, and then being ready and having the combination of fitness and freshness. But it's something I tried to mimic in 2023 at Hard Rock. Wasn't able to really do it. So,
and what would be fascinating, let's say Francois takes the dub. His first victory here was in 2012.
Yep.
That means 13 years later, he still tops the podium. As you mentioned, one of the GOATs in this sport.
Yeah, like Killian being on the podium in Western States 14 years later. But yeah, hopefully we are in for vintage Francois D'Haene. He also won a race in, it's like the Transylvania 100K earlier this year. And of course the Nolan's FKT. So again, I think sort of like John Albin, like Courtney, things we've mentioned previously in the show, it seems like he should have some decent gas in the tank. And then I also pulled from the Mile and Stone newsletter I got yesterday. They wrote a little piece about Francois, and they have a cool quote from Jim that I just want to read here. He said, "I've raced him at UTMB and Hard Rock." I think this is a misquote because Jim has paced Francois at Hard Rock, but Jim's never raced Hard Rock himself. "I've raced him at UTMB and Hard Rock. He is the best at going into zombie mode, quote unquote, when everyone else is fading. His ability to keep functioning at a high level after 15 or 16 hours is unmatched." Zombie mode. Francois.
Anyone that wants success at UTMB needs to unlock zombie mode.
Yep.
Once you get past that, because we've talked about Western States, it's a race where you're basically running during daylight hours. Yeah. You can function, but this race starting and this year they moved it up at 5:30 p.m. straight into an overnight. Everyone's gonna be hitting, and this year because of a rock slide, they've extended the course where it's 177 kilometers or so, 110 miles. Everyone needs to unlock zombie mode if they want to be successful.
Yep. So I think Courtney says like robot mode or something. So we got a robot and a zombie, both potentially favorites here at UTMB and both representing the old heads category, and a perfect segue to our number one storyline here, the 2025 UTMB, the return of the Queen, Courtney Dauwalter, after a year away, the 3-time champion, 2019, 2021, 2023. We're noticing a
2025.
pattern here. Comments on the Queen. I mean, we've already talked about her, but I think this is, objectively, from a fan's perspective, the biggest story of the week is Courtney being back here at UTMB. We know that she transcends the sport like probably only Killian does, and she alone will bring new fans to watch UTMB this weekend, and we can't overstate the well-earned influence that she has on our sport, and it's great to see her back on the start line.
Absolutely. and she's running with extra motivation. She just lost her course record at Hard Rock, and she wants to take that back. And the woman that took it from her is the one that she needs to take the course record from here at UTMB. So I think there is that extra motivation where we're going to see, if all goes well, Courtney going well under 22 hours is my call. Yeah. It's even with a slightly longer course. I think that it's going to take that. But as we've talked about at the top of the show, she's probably never been this quote unquote fresh coming in. We don't know what her training is because she's historically Strava dark, if she even has an account. But I just based on results, it's probably the least she has raced in her career in a season. Mm-hmm. And so you got to think that the coffers are fully stored. She's gearing up and she's just like chomping at the bit to rip one. Yeah. And so I think that sub 22, even on a longer course, is doable for Courtney.
So you think the course records are in danger here?
I do.
Even with the longer course?
Yep.
Are you going to go scout it?
No, what they've rerouted is all pavement. Yeah. And so even though it's longer, it's basically just running through the little towns on the way to Les Ouches. So it's adding distance in the first basically 5 miles of the course. Yeah. But no, I don't think it's going to be. It's
like an extra 2K call?
I believe it's 2K. Yeah. But, so.
It's a little bit more climbing too.
Yep. Early in the race, when people are already kind of ripping and rocking, I would say that extra 2K though isn't going to take much more than 15 minutes. Yeah. So I think that even if there was a lot of climbing, but add 10 to 15 minutes for each time. Yeah. So essentially, I think it will take a course record for the women's side.
Yeah. Well, remember Courtney, when she had the course record, finished as high as, I think, 7th overall. So that would be an interesting thing to see again, because I think if she were to run sub 22, she'd be in the mix for the overall top 10 in all likelihood, or she could be. But yeah, so I actually have a couple of honorable mentions, and the reroute was one of them. But before we get to it, just to wind down our top 10 storylines, just to make it explicitly clear for the audience here, the course record here at UTMB is held by Katie Scheib from last year, 22:09. She lopped, I think it was 21 minutes off Courtney's previous course record. One of the great 100-mile performances ever from Katie Scheib. So Courtney will, as you said, Tim, be eyeing not only potentially the course record, but becoming the first woman to run under 22 hours. Okay, before we end our show here, a couple more honorable mentions. One of the storylines was couples, where Dmitry Mityev and Katerina Mityev are both racing UTMB. That'll be fun to watch. And John Albin and Henrietta Albin were also supposed to both be doing UTMB, but Henrietta's pulled out, so we can scratch that. But Dmitry and Katerina are both racing the long race, and neither has really had a perfect day here. I think Katerina was 5th a couple of years ago, but Dmitry is like, you could see him
absolutely
finishing on the podium. Another honorable mention I'd love to get your take on is attrition here. Like last year was wild, and then 2017, like nobody dropped out. I don't know. It's like it's oftentimes that is a big story here at UTMB, and specifically in the long race, of how many people drop out.
Absolutely, and we've mentioned this in previous shows for other races, that we're starting to see that attrition kind of get tighter, and there's less of the like absolute blowups as people have kind of figured out the game or the cheat codes on these different distances. But I think UTMB still remains one of those events that you can have wild swings, where this year, if we have the start line of let's call it 20 of the top ranked men, we could have only 5 of those actually reach the finish line. It's and being that it kind of like ebbs and flows year over year. I think this year, given what you pointed out with only or so few of the returning men coming back, I think that we could actually have more attrition, as opposed to having maybe some of those seasoned veterans that had podium finishes coming back. But it's, that's what I'm hoping for. I hope there's like complete attrition and like everyone drops out. Yeah. But it's, I think it's interesting, and you can't really predict it. And I would say that, maybe we get Travis to kind of like analyze this. I would say it's also independent of the weather, because we've had weather years where almost no one drops out. And then we've had, quote unquote, nice, calm, balmy weather, and everyone drops out. Yeah. So it's kind of a wild thing and almost impossible to predict.
Yeah. The thing I think is interesting is like, if you're running UTMB, especially if you're in that top 25 ranked men and women, most of those athletes are thinking I have a shot to win the race.
Yes.
And very few of them are being like, oh, wouldn't it be sick to finish 7th or 8th or 10th here at UTMB? And so because it gets so hard, because the night is challenging, because the level of competition is so thick, like if it starts to get away from you, it becomes a lot easier to find the excuses to quit. Plus the course is just so hard that if you're racing aggressively, potentially your body fails you and you can't physically make it to the finish line. I think last year's men's podium is an example of this, right? Like I bet Vincent Bouillard, Baptiste Chassain, nor Joaquin Lopez really thought they had a chance to win, right? And because they, of course, they all ran great times, but they probably had a different mindset than, you know, a lot of the group of men that ended up pulling out. And then similarly on the women's side, like Katie, yeah, she ran off the front. She ran aggressively. She stuck it. She broke the course record. But Marianne Hogan and Ruth, like they both like ran smart, you know, like Marianne didn't try and stay with Katie. Ruth didn't try and stay with Katie. Both could, you know, for, you know, at least over the Col de Bonhomme or something like that. So what I'm trying to get across is like, if you're a solid pro athlete and just focus on having a good one here, like you can be top 5 or on the podium potentially.
Absolutely.
And I think even if you are an athlete who legitimately has a chance to win, if you come into it just with the mindset of like, let's just have a solid one, not like I'm going to have the day of my life. Otherwise, you know, pack it up and go home. Yeah. You can freaking,
I mean, in theory, it's easy to be top 10 at UTMB if you're one of those top 25, 30 ranked women or men, if you strategize and execute on that. But the problem, not the problem, but most runners, they want to win. They want top 5. So they go at it, throw a dozen eggs at the wall. Most of them are going to crack. So,
well, we'll see what happens this year, but attrition was a massive storyline last year and has been in the past, so our audience will want to keep an eye on that. The last thing I had written down was not necessarily debuts, but people who are moving up in distance here. So people like Dani Moreno, Francesco Puppi, Eli Hemming, David Sinclair, those are all going to be really fun to watch. Those were all my honorable mentions. I want to give you a chance to provide a Tim's Transcendent Truth if anything's off the top of your head here.
Should have had something, huh? I'm going to blame jet lag, fresh off the boat. But, man, I got nothing today. You know, I don't know. I'm shooting blanks.
Maybe it's just have the mindset of just having a good day. Right?
It just, go in there. Okay, so if you're in this race, set your expectations low. You're going to exceed them. So it's kind of a good philosophy for life. Just don't have any goals, don't have any expectations, and you're always going to come out all right. You're going to have a good time.
I think that's the opposite of like shoot for the stars, you'll end up on the moon or whatever, right?
Yep.
All right. So some life advice here to close for Tim's Transcendent Truth, a viral sensation for our trailgating coverage. A great way to start our week and to start our coverage here at the 2025 UTMB. Before we go, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please make sure you go play fantasy trail running. We're picking 10 deep for OCC, CCC, and UTMB. Fantasy.freetrail.com. We got baller prize packages on the line from our homies at Hoka. We got the OCC preview show tomorrow with Dani Moreno. We're also doing a bunch of athlete interviews. So by the time this goes up, Hayden Hawks will be out. Dani Moreno will be out. And then today we're doing the Hemmings, Abby Hall, Harmo, do you remember? Rod Farvard, and I think one or two others. So make sure you watch our athlete interviews. Also, we'll be at the Hoka Shakeout Run on Tuesday. So come say what's up to your Freetrail friends there at the Hoka Shakeout Run from the Fly Lab, which is situated just outside our studio here. Yeah, go check out the Fly Lab too. A really cool activation from Hoka. Make sure you grab that Mafate 5 at Hoka.com. And finally, a big thank you to the team that makes it possible. Ryan Throat, Brett Jorgensen, Harmony Bowman. For Tim Tollefson, I'm Debo. We'll see you tomorrow.